The race to build ships for war solved one crisis, but quietly created another. In the desperate years of the Second World War, American industry was pushed to its limits. Shipyards worked around the clock, launching vessels at a pace never before seen. Hidden within this triumph of mass production, however, was a dangerous weakness that nobody recognized at the time, a flaw embedded in the very steel of the ships themselves. Between 1939 and 1945, U.S. shipyards produced roughly 5,770 vessels. Of those, 2,510 were Liberty ships, the workhorses of an emergency program created to keep Great Britain supplied with the materials needed to continue fighting the war. The mission demanded speed above all else. To achieve that speed, Liberty ships were designed for simple construction. Large sections were prefabricated and then assembled together. Instead of relying primarily on traditional rivets, builders embraced extensive welding, a modern technique that dramatically reduced construction time. The results were astonishing. By 1943, American shipyards were completing ships at a rate that averaged nearly one vessel every 8 hours. But rapid production came with a hidden cost. In January 1943, a newly built T-2 tanker named Schenectady suffered a shocking failure. Sitting unloaded in calm water, only months after entering service, the vessel suddenly fractured and split apart. It was an event that defied conventional engineering wisdom. Soon, similar incidents began appearing elsewhere. Over the following months, ship failures multiplied. Some vessels developed major cracks. Others broke apart with little or no warning. Engineers, shipbuilders, and government officials struggled to understand what was happening. The situation became serious enough to alarm the U.S. Maritime Commission, which urgently searched for answers. Then, almost as suddenly as the failures had begun, they seemed to stop. By the summer of 1943, reports of catastrophic fractures largely disappeared. Many assumed the crisis had been an unusual anomaly. That assumption would not last. As winter approached once again, alarming reports returned. Liberty ships crossing the oceans began suffering structural failures. Some vessels literally broke in two while at sea, often resulting in the loss of valuable cargo and, in some cases, the lives of crew members. An investigation was launched, but the early conclusions missed the real cause. Many officials blamed poor welding practices and inadequate workmanship. Faulty welds certainly contributed to some failures, but they were not the underlying reason the ships were breaking apart. The true explanation would take years to uncover. Unable to identify the root cause immediately, engineers shifted their focus toward limiting damage rather than solving the mystery itself. They studied fracture patterns and noticed that cracks frequently originated near the corners of cargo hatches located around the center section of the ship. The location made sense. As ships moved through waves, the greatest bending forces often occurred near the midpoint. When a vessel rode over a wave crest, hydrodynamic forces increased, causing the hull to flex significantly. Repeated bending concentrated stress around hatch corners, making them natural locations for cracks to begin. Yet something still didn't add up. Engineers already understood fatigue and cyclic loading. Those factors alone should not have caused ships to snap apart so dramatically. There had to be another piece of the puzzle. That missing piece emerged through the work of a researcher named Constant Tipper. While examining steel taken from fractured Liberty ships, Tipper discovered a phenomenon that transformed the investigation. Under normal conditions, steel is considered a ductile material. When a crack forms, the metal around the crack tip deforms plastically. This deformation reduces stress concentration and slows the growth of the crack. Brittle materials behave very differently. In glass, for example, a crack creates a region of intense stress at its tip. That stress causes the crack to grow, which increases the stress even further, producing a self-reinforcing cycle that can rapidly tear through the entire structure. Tipper's experiments revealed that the steel used in many Liberty ships could behave in both ways, depending on temperature. She measured the material's fracture toughness, the property that describes a material's resistance to crack growth, across a range of temperatures. What she found was remarkable. As temperatures dropped, the steel underwent a transition. Instead of remaining tough and ductile, it became increasingly brittle. At sufficiently low temperatures, the steel began behaving less like conventional structural steel and more like glass. Suddenly, the pattern of failures became clear. During cold winter months, small defects and cracks that would normally remain harmless could spread rapidly through the hull. Once initiated, fractures could travel enormous distances before stopping, sometimes cutting through entire sections of a ship. The extensive use of welding, occasional poor weld quality, and variations in steel quality all played contributing roles. Together, they helped produce approximately 2,500 recorded fractures between 1941 and 1945. But the most important factor was the steel's tendency to transition from ductile behavior to brittle behavior in low temperatures. The evidence supporting this conclusion was compelling. Major Class I fractures virtually disappeared during warmer summer months, only to return when temperatures dropped again. What initially appeared to be a mystery of construction quality turned out to be a lesson in materials science. The Liberty ships had not simply been victims of rushed manufacturing. They had revealed a critical weakness in how engineers understood steel itself. The wartime crisis ultimately transformed the field of fracture mechanics and changed the way ships, bridges, and countless other structures would be designed for decades to come.